Hello and welcome to the Podawakens. And our journey now begins for the High Republic Road to the Acolyte as we talk Phase 1 books. I am joined here by our guest, Christina, today. How are you today, Christina?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for jumping on to talk Light of the Jedi and kicking off this whole event here.
Yeah.
Um, So I guess I like to do this for every single guest that I have on. Is just like a list of questions for listeners to kind of get to know you, what your favorite Star Wars things are. And if you haven't done some of these, like when we get to the books before Disney, like the old EU and video games and stuff, if you don't do that, we can just skip those questions. But um, how about favorite Star Wars movie?
My favorite Star Wars movie would have to be Return of the Jedi. I've always been really fond of that movie. I love the resolution between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, their final
Hmm.
fight in there. That's always been one of my favorite fights. And I think it just concludes that original trilogy perfectly, which brings to that next question. The original trilogy would be my favorite trilogy. So
Great. Okay, yeah. Favorite trilogy is the original trilogy. Is there like a reason why? Is that the one you saw like first, or was it like just the one that always comforts you that you always go back to?
I was 8 years old when I first got into Star Wars, so my first Star Wars movie was actually The Phantom Menace. So I,
Right.
I was a prequel gal. But I've always gravitated more towards the original trilogy because I've always liked Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and Han Solo more. But that doesn't mean like I don't like the prequels or the sequels any less. But I've always kind of gravitated more towards the original trilogy and the whole mystery behind like who Darth Vader was and
Hmm.
Empire versus Rebellion, things like that. So.
So you say your first movie was Phantom. Was that like theaters or just like overall? Like you watched that before you even saw the originals on like VHS?
That's exactly what happened. My dad bought me
Hmm.
the Phantom Menace on VHS, and then I had wanted to watch the original trilogy right after I saw the Phantom Menace. The first Star Wars movie I actually saw in theaters was Attack of the Clones.
Oh, same. Okay. Yeah, because I was 8 as well when Phantom Menace came out. I did not see it in theaters. I had I had Revenge. I almost said Revenge of the Sith. I had Return of the Jedi on VHS. It was like this pre-special edition version that we got from a video store. Um, that I guess like the video store was just selling one of their copies because they had like like almost like the blockbuster case, but with like the actual cover art, but like a bigger, thicker case. Um, and so like my options of watching Star Wars really was Return of the Jedi, and then I didn't have A New Hope or Empire at that point. I had seen them before, but I like did not have them. And then when Phantom Menace came out on DVD, I got that. So it was like my only options would be whipping out the VHS for Return of the Jedi or watching Phantom Menace on DVD. And those for a while were the only two I had until I got the special editions on VHS from my grandfather. But it's just those were the two movies I'd always end up watching. So I know Return of the Jedi very well. All right, next question is favorite character.
I'm pointing the original trilogy again. I've always loved Luke Skywalker and
Mhm.
him going against his teachings and trying to save his father instead of trying to help defeat him. And I still even really loved him in The Last Jedi still. But then
Yeah.
another character that's creeping up there for me is Ben Solo, aka Kylo Ren. I love his story in the sequels as well. He's my favorite sequel character. So
Great. Okay, favorite prequel character then, since you've given me a sequel character as well.
I'm gonna go with. Can I do something from the Clone Wars?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna say Ahsoka Tano. That
Okay. Nice. Okay, that kind of transition us to favorite TV show here. Um, you can split it up too if you want to give me like favorite animated and favorite live action, whichever works best for you.
Yes, I was thinking about that. My favorite animated show is Rebels. My favorite live action show is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Nice.
And I also really loved Ahsoka as well. So
Awesome. Yeah, I just pre-ordered Obi-Wan on 4K Blu-ray because I'm a physical collector. I need to have the DVD, the Blu-ray, in case if anything happens to the streaming.
right.
But Rebels, same. And actually, not to spoil, I've been recording these out of order, but based on people's availability and stuff. But so far, that is the most popular answer for that question for animation
Wow.
is Rebels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is great because I always felt like that was not the case. Like, just reading online and stuff, it seemed like everybody was always pro Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And I like the Clone Wars. I'm actually currently doing like a weekly rewatch of it, and my friend's watching it for the first time, and we, drop episodes in batches on here. But it's like I like Rebels more because I feel like, and people are going to get so sick of me saying this because I've said it to each person so far, but that they focus on the core group of those rebels. There's not like, here's the R2 and Jar Jar episode, like of the Clone Wars, where you're like, okay, this one doesn't actually have that many big stakes over the course of the whole Clone Wars. Rebels is like solely focused on, Ezra, Kanan, Zeb, Sabine, Hera, Chopper, like that's what I really enjoy about Rebels. It felt like we got to get to know those characters a little bit more.
100%.
Okay, do you play any of the games? And if so, your favorite game?
Well, the only games I've actually played were like the Clone Wars games for the Nintendo DS, and I even had the Revenge of the Sith Game Boy game, but I don't have like a PlayStation, so I haven't played like Jedi Fallen Order or anything like that, or Battlefront or stuff like that, but I've heard they're good.
Have you ended up watching anything from like Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor?
I'm aware of like the High Republic tie-ins to the
okay.
recent game, so I'm aware of that. And then I know a little bit about like the Zepho from the first Jedi Fallen Order game and stuff.
Okay.
So I know a little bit.
Cool. How about did you read any of the stuff before Disney made the purchase, the old EU? And if so, what's your favorite?
I sure did, because I started reading the stuff when I was in middle school up until Disney did its own stuff.
Right.
I have a really bad in shape trade paperback of Shadows of the Empire, and then I'm also a fan of like that new Jedi Order Legacy era stuff, like Legacy of the Force is some of my favorite Star Wars books. The new Jedi Order stuff, I have all those in trade paperback. And even like, I know a lot of people will probably maybe throw this up, but Darth Plagueis.
Oh,
is a good one too. So, and then I have read like the original Thrawn trilogy and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I had read some in middle school as well. I had started reading them in elementary school, like not the big ones, but like the Jedi Apprentice series by Jude Watson, where they were like scholastic, very like thin, but they were 18-book series. I was like reading those a lot in like 5th grade. And then in like middle school, I started reading New Jedi Order. What's the first one? Like Vector Prime or something like that. Yeah. So I remember that one. I have that somewhere around here. I believe that's when they killed Chewie. I was upset about that. Yeah. But then I like I read a few of those, but kind of lost, kind of fell out of them at some point. I still ended up buying them though. I don't know why, but I would like buy almost all of them. I did have the Legacy of the Force ones as well. And I really liked the trilogy they did at the end. Just for the covers. What was it, the Swarm trilogy or whatever?
the Dark Nest trilogy.
Yeah, they have like Luke with like the with a great cover, and then there's like one with Han on the cover and one with
Yes.
Leia on the cover, and they're all really cool covers. I bought them like just for the cover.
I have those on trade paperback in my room, so I know what you're
Okay,
talking
cool.
about. That's
Yeah.
where Luke and Leia also learned about Padme being their mom too. So
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, so I read a little bit of those in the past, but then like didn't keep up with them, and then had always made it a point to go back. And then once Disney made the announcement, I was like, okay, I can actually jump on at like
yeah.
the actual beginning. I've fallen off on some of those too. I've been
Oof.
trying to catch up on some of those, but yeah. All right, favorite of the new expanded universe. If it is High Republic, you can say that. If not, like give me what else is in your top.
Well, I mentioned before to you that obviously Light of the Jedi and the Rising Storm are two of my favorite
Yeah.
all-time Star Wars books. I'm also a big fan of Claudia Gray's books. Like I love Lost Stars, I love Bloodline, and then even Catalyst, which was that Rogue One novel. I thought that was really good. And then a lot of the young adult novels I think have been pretty good too, but Light of the Jedi and The Rising Storm are two of my all-time favorite books. Plus, like Lost Stars, Bloodline. So,
yeah, I remember I read Bloodline because that was right before Last Jedi.
yeah,
Right, because she said she worked with Ryan on that. Bloodline's an interesting novel. I liked it, but I would say if I had to go with like my favorite news stuff right now, it's been Shadows of the Sith.
yes, that's a good one. Yeah,
Yeah, I love the sequels, unlike a lot of people, but like it's I think it really helped me with like I liked Rise of Skywalker, but
yeah,
like I think it helped just the sequels as a whole when you have a story about a young Rey, you have Luke and Lando having an adventure that they kind of reference in Rise of Skywalker with Ochi of Bassoon and stuff. So that one, and then even it ties into Mandalorian with Tython and like having the rock that Grogu sits on. So it's been like really cool how they've been tying some of that stuff together. I think that's one thing I really like so far about the new expanded universe is especially once they went to Disney Plus, it's like, okay, we have Cobb Vanth from Aftermath making a appearance. We have Black Chrysanthemum show up. You know, it's like wild what we're getting from before. We would never get that stuff. George was very like, I'll overwrite it. You know, like he didn't care.
Yeah.
Fair to him though. I mean, it is his story. So
yeah. I was gonna say I'm a fan too of that New Republic going into the Rise of the First Order stuff too. Like I'm really excited to see like where Luke's Academy stuff is gonna go, even though we know how that ends. But still, I'm excited to continue reading on with that stuff. And then I'm really excited to see where they're gonna take Thrawn after Ahsoka and stuff. So that's really some exciting stuff to look forward to and stuff. So.
All right, so let's get into High Republic as a whole here. Before I ask you your favorite High Republic characters, you already answered your book. It's this one or Rising Storm. What kind of got you into the High Republic? Like, I know you probably were just going to read these anyway because you're reading Star Wars, but like, what was it about it that like when you saw my post that you're like, I really want to talk about this?
Well, for one thing, I don't have anybody to talk about it with. My brother listens to me all the time talk about it, but I don't have anybody like to share it with as like a whole because none of my friends are into Star Wars. So it's just like my brother listens to me, but I have nobody to talk about it with. But what happened was I was there since the beginning. I was watching the announcement when they announced it back before around when the pandemic began. And so I was always interested in that. But it was the idea that it was set so far into the past, showing the Jedi and the height of their power and stuff like that, and even going further back and stuff. So a lot of that was interesting to me, and then seeing all these cool Jedi characters and non-Jedi characters and stuff. So
yeah, that's good. I feel the same way. That's why I had to put the posting out, right? Because like I don't have anybody. Like I have friends that are into Star Wars. I've had like other guests on here that are big Star Wars fans, but just haven't really ever dove into the books, right? And haven't really dived into the High Republic, especially if they had read any of the books. Um, so I've always been wanting to talk about it on here, but I was just like, I'm not going to do it by myself. Like,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I want to be able to share this with people. And I think one thing that has really helped cement it for me is why I really enjoyed it is it's kind of what I've been wanting for quite a while. Um, one of the first episodes of the show was after Rise of Skywalker, and me and my friend Logan did an episode like Future of Star Wars. What do you want to see? And I was very adamant I wanted to see new eras, either very far in the future, very far in the past, so we can kind of get away from the Skywalker saga. Um, you know, you have I was thinking further back, honestly, just because then you can get away from Yoda as well and having like a crutch. But I feel like they needed that crutch probably to get some people interested. But in my opinion, I wanted something so far removed from the main story because I feel like since Disney has taken over, it's been very saturated in that original trilogy timeline. Um, you know, when they took over, they immediately canceled Clone Wars. Trying to stay away from prequel stuff, but I also think it was just like we're not going to give a show to another network, and that other network
Right.
was a competitor in WB with Cartoon Network.
Right.
They were
Yeah.
like, no, that doesn't make any sense for them. We're going to create our own show that can go on our network, and they did that with Rebels. So then they were kind of really leaning into even the books, right? Like the first book you had, I forget what it was, but A New Dawn comes out. That was a
Yes.
very Kanan focused
Yes.
book leading into Rebels. But they also had what?
They had
Heir to the
Tarkin.
Jedi?
They had
that one?
Tarkin, Heir to the
Oh,
Jedi,
right.
and yeah, obviously A New Dawn, I believe, was the first one. So yeah, they had those
Yes.
three.
Yeah, and they were all like they're not a singular story, right? They're just
Yeah.
dotted around the timeline. Here's this. And what I liked about the old EU, even though I didn't read it completely, was that we would get runs of trilogies or storylines that would continue from book to book. And then you would have some that would, obviously not. But like when they were doing their post Return of the Jedi stuff, it was like, here's a full story. We were getting just pieces. Like you got the Aftermath trilogy, but other than that, it was mostly one-off stories. And none of it'd be like, here's a Leia story, right? Bloodline. And then you'd have like Heir to the Jedi. There's Luke's story. And they're all dotted around in different points. The comic even went between 4 and 5 again. And a lot of the games were between 3 and 4, right? Like there wasn't a lot of expanding the timeline until the actual sequels and Mandalorian, I guess, pushing that past Return of the Jedi. What I like about the High Republic so far, I've been calling it almost like a TV show, like especially with how many books and comics there are, right?
Yeah.
It is like characters that appear in a young adult novel can show up in a middle grade, can show up in a adult novel, and you'll be checking in with those characters. And while it is a lot when you're talking about just trying to catch up on all this stuff, like I still haven't read it all. Like I started with the adult books,
right?
And then I realized how much I was missing by not doing the young adults, and stuff like that. So now I'm like diving into those. When I was on vacation, I finished like 3 of these audiobooks just driving because I had like a 14-hour drive there and back. So 28 hours of listening to audiobooks can get you through quite a few of them.
Wow.
But yeah, that's like my main thing of why I've really enjoyed this and what I've wanted. It's a different timeline, different era, and just a continuing story where I'm able to check in with my favorite characters and be like, oh yes, I'm so glad they're back.
How far are you into phase 2?
So phase 2, I've only read Convergence.
Okay.
And then I realized people said I should have read Path of Deceit first. So I'm going to go back and read Path of Deceit.
Okay, I'll try not to spoil a couple things when we get far along. So I'll do my best.
Yeah, I guess let's try to keep it to phase 1 for people that are listening as well. But, okay, favorite High Republic character.
I don't know if I can actually pinpoint one because there are so many good characters, like particularly in this book we're about to go over, Light of the Jedi. I love Bell. I love Elzar because he's such a messy Jedi. Even Bell's relationship with Loden Greatstorm, I think, is great. Mm-hmm. And then in the middle grade books, I was a fan of Ernestra Rowe and stuff. So, and then Avon, I love Avon. Avon's cute. Yes, I love her. And then it's just hard, I think, to pinpoint one in particular that I love. But I'm just throwing out Elzar, Bell, and for this particular book and stuff. So,
all right, cool. Yeah, no, that's fine. Give me a few. That's fine. My favorite is, because I have two as well. My favorite's Bell. I felt like I really connected with him in this story. I thought Loden was really cool. But my other favorite is Stellan Gios in this era.
I forgot Stellan. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. He's great. And I think it might be because, so I listened to the audiobooks as well, and we get Mark Thompson doing almost an Obi-Wan voice for Stellan. And Obi-Wan is my favorite character in Star Wars. And I feel like he also kind of looks like Obi-Wan. Like circa episode 3, Obi-Wan Kenobi is kind of what Stellan is rocking. So I feel like they're both the very pragmatic Jedi, rule followers. So I feel like that is why I've kind of drifted to Stellan so much now as well.
Yeah.
How about favorite phase? There's 3 phases currently. Phase 3 is in the middle, right?
Yeah, it's phase 2 is in the middle. It starts off and then it's phase
1. I meant like phase 3 is like currently published.
Yes, it's wave 1, phase 3, wave 2 starting in June. So.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I get my phases and waves mixed up.
Yes.
So I got it. Right now, just depending on where phase 3 is going, I'm going to say phase 1 because it started it all. So, and then a lot of those books I love and stuff besides Light of the Jedi and the Rising Storm. Like I was a big fan of A Test of Courage. I really liked Race to Crash Point Tower. I love Ram. Ram is my son. And then even like the young adult books like Into the Dark, Out of the Shadows, which I loved, and then Midnight Horizon. I thought a lot of those were really on point and really good. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, let's dive into this one then. Light of the Jedi. This is one of the ones that you when I asked for favorite books, you provided me this one and Rising Storm. So I think you were the only one, or maybe there was 2 people that said Light of the Jedi when I would ask that question. So that's why I came to you to say, let's do Light of the Jedi, because a lot of people did pick Rising Storm, actually.
Well, that's really good, so I'm not complaining, but I'm like, Light of the Jedi, it started it, why not?
Yeah, so what was it about this book for you that really like stood out and made you say this one is one of my favorites? I mean, because for me, this is probably my weakest of the adult books, in my opinion. And I liked it when I read it. I felt like it just took me a little bit to get into it. I feel like I got into it about halfway through that I was like, really like, okay, now I'm really digging this. But it took a while to get going, in my opinion. And then when I really fell in love with the High Republic was Rising Storm, and my favorite, I say, is Fallen Star, actually. But so go ahead, tell me your journey with Light of the Jedi.
I thought it was the perfect entry point to it, and I know a lot of people struggled with like there's so many characters in here, but I don't listen to audiobook. I just plainly read, but I didn't have any issues.
Read this one. Yeah, I read this one. I did not audiobook it. Maybe if I had, I would have enjoyed it more. I don't know.
But I didn't have any issues with it. I was able to follow it along. I thought it was a good starting point. We got to meet a lot of the Jedi characters early on, especially Avar, the state of the Republic at the time where we're at, introducing like Markian Row, and then the Tempest runners. I thought it had a clear sense of what everybody's goals were and where everybody was at. So, and then obviously it ended on that thing of what was yet to come and stuff. So I thought it was just the perfect setup, a lot of it. So
Yeah, so we kind of start out, what I think is very interesting about this book, right, is we kind of start out with not knowing, like, I had no clue what was going to happen in this
right,
story. I like, I followed some of the pre-release stuff that would talk about, look, these are, 150 years before Phantom Menace, all that kind of stuff, and here is the characters. Like, I usually save the photos that they have for the characters. Like, when they were sharing like the concept art, I saved all those in my phone and put them into a folder called High Republic Phase 1.
oh
So that way, if they mention a character, I see if I have a picture of them, so I can get like a better, like, that's what Belle looks like, or that's
yeah,
what, Loden looks like, and stuff like that. And I would kind of refer to that as I'm reading at times. But this book starts off, and it was very shocking, I would say, at the beginning.
yeah,
We had no clue that this ship, the Legacy Run, was about to, blow up and have like these emergences that really are like the
yeah,
main problem of this book.
yeah.
What was your thoughts when we're getting this? Because I did get attached to some of these characters in the opening here that
Yeah,
then get pretty killed off
that's
quickly.
what I said when I read it too. I'm like, well, we get attached to these people on the Legacy Run. Well, goodbye. And then when we get to, I believe Hetzel is
Yes, Hetzel,
yes,
yeah.
yes, where he's getting ready to go on a date with this woman, then he goes, well, goodbye. So he's already killing
Yes.
people off. I'm like, okay, let's see where this goes. So it was definitely, I had no idea where it was going to go. We were just going to have to wait and see, but it was definitely interesting seeing, well, he's going to kill people off already. Here we go.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, because I told people in the Acolyte episode we did for the trailer, I told people, hey, we're going to start doing the road to the Acolyte. Make sure, if you want to listen along and not have read any of this, you can. So if they don't care about spoilers, obviously, like, I'm not
Right.
going to tiptoe around stuff just because people haven't read these books, but just kind of get people the feel of it and stuff. If people weren't really aware of what this is, this movie, this book starts off with the Legacy Run, which is a ship carrying a whole bunch of people, ends up getting ripped in half and into pieces in hyperspace, and it starts causing what they call emergences, which are like when these pieces of the ship are
Yes.
coming out of hyperspace and are heading towards a lot of times disastrous
Right.
places,
Yes.
towards planets where people are worried about it colliding. It. One thing I did like in this book that is very interesting to me too is seeing the political aspects of it, where we focus on like a different planet, and you see, like, all right, how are they going to handle? I think it may have been Hetzel, but one of the planets where this stuff is heading towards them, right? And they're
Yeah.
like debating, like, how do we handle this? What do we do?
Yeah, and then they ran into an issue where they were trying to stop it on Hetzel, where they found Tabana on it, so they had to try to stop that before they could even do the rest of the emergencies. And then however you say the next planet, Abdallas, yeah, they end up getting hit with a bunch of emergencies. And then Eriadu, which is Tarkin's home planet, was getting hit, and Nile were involved with that and stuff. So it was all these pieces of that ship were coming out of hyperspace and crash landing into these planets. So, but they were able to stop it on Hetzel, but Avar had to get all the other Jedi and call upon the Force, and they were able to stop it together. But obviously, they didn't know that other planet was going to get hit. So,
yeah, because it's a very unpredictable thing, right?
Yeah.
You don't know, like, when these emergencies are going to happen. I think something like at some point in this, like 30 or 40 of these emergencies happen. It is like constantly happening and causing issues for the Jedi. And of course, where the thing is all supposed to really start is the Jedi and the Republic have decided to build a place that many people may have heard of just from the promotional stuff, but Starlight Beacon, which is supposed to be a beacon for like light, right? And
Yeah,
the Republic and all of that stuff. In the frontier where it's not where the Republic hasn't really expanded to fully.
right.
And their whole point in doing that is to, like I said, be a beacon of light, all this kind of stuff. But it's like another hub for the Jedi, almost like another temple where some of the Jedi can be, they can do things, they can dispatch to help people on the
Yep.
frontier. And ultimately, like right when this thing is happening is when the build up to Starlight
Yep.
Beacon and opening is happening. So the Republic is like completely scattered with their response and what they're doing. And we're also introduced, of course, to the Jedi Avar Kriss, who
Yep.
is kind of like the main Jedi of this book, I would say.
Yes, she has the ability to make force bonds stronger among Jedi, and then she hears the force as a song. But using the power of the force to make force bonds stronger amongst the Jedi is how they're able to eventually stop the emergencies hitting Hetzel, which is the planet where they go to try to stop the emergencies
Right.
that are hitting Soule.
Yeah, pretty interesting. What do you think of her force powers with the hearing the force as the song and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I thought that was something interesting. And then it wasn't just her. We saw a few other Jedi at how they view the Force. Like Bell
Yeah.
sees it as fire. I know later on they said that Stellan sees it as like a constellation.
Mm-hmm.
Elzar sees it as water. And then Loden sees it as wind. So I thought it was interesting how all these Jedi interpret the Force in different ways. And then even her power that she can create stronger Force bonds among Jedi and stuff. I thought that was all really something interesting that we hadn't seen. So
Yeah, they kind of were able to do, when they're basing a story that far in the past and having them at their peak, they were able to really just pull out any sort of force powers they wanted to and be like, this is like peak Jedi before the Sith really corrupt the Force and cloud them in Phantom Menace. So really interesting to see all of those differences between them, because even Vernestra has a different Force ability, not to go too far into that, but where she can have like visions of things that are happening at the time that they're happening. Almost like you at least that's how I interpret it, because in not Test of Courage. Yeah. Was it? No, it was Out of the Shadows.
Yeah.
Where she was experiencing like that family. And then by the time she got there, which was really quick, they were already dead. So it seemed to be like something happening at the same time, or maybe just a little bit before, but she wasn't able to actually put a stop to it, unfortunately. But yeah, a lot of Jedi having different unique abilities here in the High Republic. All right, how about the let's just talk about the villains themselves here, the Nihil, and what your thoughts are on like kind of the grunts of the Nihil, and if you think that they are, I guess, like your just thoughts on the Nihil overall, because they were really, I would say, when they were doing the pre-release stuff, saying like this is something Jedi haven't really fought before, like we needed to make villains that can be, threats to Jedi that are not Sith and all that kind of stuff. Did that live up to it in your opinion?
I think later on in phase 1, as we were getting like the Rising Storm and the Fallen Star, they definitely started growing in power, and especially when Markion really took over and stuff, which I know there's different pronunciations for his name, but I heard Charles Soule and Kevin Scott say Markion, so that's what I go with.
Yeah, because in the books, in the audiobooks, they say Marchion at first. And to be honest, when I was reading it, I'm pretty sure I read it that way. Because it felt right. And then they came out and said, no, it's Marchion. And then they've, in the later audiobooks, have gone with Marchion now.
Right. Okay. See, I didn't know if Mark Thompson was going to start saying it properly, because I know a lot of
Yes.
people will say Marchion, but like I said, I say Marchion because that's how Charles Soule and Kevin Scott said. So that's what I've been going with. They would seem like pirates originally, but the way that they have their hierarchy of power and stuff, and the way they do things, they were definitely, as phase one went on, they were definitely growing more as a threat, especially when something else was brought into the picture that happens in the Rising Storm and stuff. So, but they seem like pirates, but they're worse. So, but I thought Marky and Rowe was a good villain to start off with. So,
Yeah, no, I think my favorite of the villains is Markion. I think he is the more interesting just character as a whole, I would say, compared to your regular grunts. For people that don't know, like, they're not a species, right? Like, the Nihil are a group, is what I would say. They're like a gang, I guess you could say. And their structure is like based off of how would you say, like, weather?
yeah, because you have
Clouds and strikes
yes, because you
and
have Marky and Rowe, who's the Eye of the Nile, eventually
yeah,
takes overall leadership of it, and then you have these Tempest runners that are
right.
below him that run their own tempests, and then from that you have strikes, storms, and clouds and stuff like that. It's different groups and stuff, and you eventually climb the ranks and stuff. But each Tempest runner has their own Tempest that they run and stuff. Like you have Linktr.ee, who's a Tempest
Right.
runner, Pan Ada,
And yeah.
and I can't remember the other guy's name. He was a weak way.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. I
That
forget
guy.
his name too. Pan Ada and Linktr.ee are the more memorable
Yeah.
ones, so I feel like those are the two I always think of. But yeah, so that's how they're kind of structured, and you can have like Linktr.ee as a Twi'lek, right? So
Yep.
you have different species, all kind of part of this thing. So I think people kind of thought originally they might have been going with like a Yuzang Vong type of thing of like a species coming in here, but it's really like a group of people in a gang. Like you said, it's very structured. And in this book, the eye of the Nihil is actually not the leader, right? At the beginning of this, he kind of because you have like the Tempest runners are like voting
Yeah.
a lot of times on like where to go. They get the paths from the eye.
Markian.
They
Yep.
don't know how the eye gets the path, right? Which
Yep.
is a very twisted thing that happens in later books.
Well,
But
they go ahead.
he eventually does kind of like catapult this to be able to take control of
Yep.
everything kind of during this book or at the very end of this book.
Yes, because what happened was Markion's Rose great grandmother is the one that started the Nile, and he eventually inherited all from his father Asgar Rowe. So, but I don't. They do bring up Mari Santeca in this book, who is a
Yes.
very old woman that he keeps alive in a tank, and that's where he's getting all these paths, and these paths are where the Nile have what they call a path engine, and allows them to take these paths through hyperspace where like the Republic can't detect them or whatever. So that's how they're
It's
able
without
to.
using like a Navid computer too, it's like it just like spits out these coordinates. And it's a lady, like you said, she's connected to the Force is kind of like later revealed on how she can do this. And she's a Santeca, like you said,
Yep.
and the Santecas do appear in this story. But if people are thinking, where have I heard that name before?
Yep.
Lore Santeca
Yep.
from The Force Awakens, which is Max
Yep.
Van Sydow's character, who is like the first one to utter a line in The Force Awakens when he says, "This will begin to make things right," as he
Yep.
hands Poe the map to Luke Skywalker. So just all these connections
Yep.
on how they're able to do this. I was so happy when I read the name Santeca in this book. What was your thoughts when you got to that?
I knew who Lor San Tekka was already from The Force
Right.
Awakens, so of course I was excited to see they were going to exploring more of that, and then later on they do explore the Graff family and stuff with this, which is a family from another thing of era of Star Wars books that they have for younger readers. So
Yeah. No, that's really cool. It felt like it paid off, like finally having those like visual dictionaries.
yeah,
Like I got
yes,
all the visual dictionaries when the new sequel movie would come out. I'm like, I know his name is Lor San
yeah,
Tekka, and like nobody else cares. Nobody else knows.
I care.
I care. Yeah. So it was great to kind of get history on his family because he's part of the Church of the Force,
Yep,
which has connections with all this. So it's really great that he popped up. Not him himself, but his family.
right, his family.
Okay, and then let's talk about some of these other Jedi. Another one that's one of my favorite is Buryaga, who is a
Yes,
Wookiee
yeah.
Jedi.
Fact, I was gonna say really quick, Leslie Heather liked it so much that they put a Jedi Wookiee in the Acolyte.
I
So.
know. I wish it was Buryaga, but yeah. So we'll. I like his relationship with Bell. In like later books that really gets
Yep.
highlighted, but they do have like a great friendship, and Buryaga, he's just cool. Like I've always wanted to see more Wookiee Jedi. We got Gunji in the Clone Wars or whatever, and that's
Yes.
really the only one we ever saw.
I like Buryaga too because he's more sensitive to the Force. It can feel people's feelings, and then his
Yes.
master Neb Asik even learned Shriwook just to understand him too. So.
Yes. Yeah. And we have Bell Zettifar
Yep.
and Loden Greatstorm.
Yes.
Who we get a very good, I would say, part of the book, right, is focusing on Bell and Loden, because Loden's actually going to get captured at the end of this book.
Yes.
They think he's dead,
Right.
but he is captured by Markion and the Nihil. So Bell ends up losing his master in this story because he is Loden's Padawan.
Yes.
Also, just a really cool name, Loden Greatstorm. Like, that is the most Star Wars name I think I've ever heard.
Yes.
So tell me your thoughts on Bell. You said you really like Bell too. So
I do. I love his relationship with Loden. I feel sorry for Bell because he was over there trying to either fall from the Jedi Vector or on the cliff on Elfrona because he's trying to get him to teach him how to catch himself with the Force.
Right.
But he has a lot of faith in his Padawan and stuff that he's going to be able to become a great Jedi one day and stuff. And it does get really sad because he later on in books, he wants to believe that his master is still alive out there and stuff. But then obviously, if you're at the Rising Storm, you know what happens with that. So
yes.
And yeah, I just love him and their relationship with that because it kind of is sad where Bell goes in Phase 3 a little bit and stuff too. But
interesting.
I think but I won't get too much in the detail. But yeah, and stuff. It's just a fun. And then Ember.
Yes,
can't forget Ember. I love Ember.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, he's just. Yeah. I think he's just a great Padawan and stuff. I love his personality and everything about him. Pretty much, I love his locks. So
yes, yeah. Bell is great. Like you said, that scene is like how he's introduced, or one of the scenes very early, right? Is when he's getting pushed to like save himself, right? And I feel like I just had an immediate like bond or liking to Bell. He's very, I feel like very relatable.
Yeah.
Just overall, he's a fun Jedi. He's got a little dog, which is a Charhound, named Ember. I am now, well, for the last 5 years, I've been a dog dad. So I never had a pet before until I got my dogs, and now I totally understand where Bell is coming from when he's like worried about Ember in any sort of situation. I'm like, I feel you, Bell. That's how I would be with my dogs right now.
She's a handy Charhound too. So
yes,
Yeah, he is. He's very relatable in that sense too, because he's one of the younger Jedi that we see and stuff. So we're able to like
Mhm.
follow along on his journey throughout phase one stuff through the books and stuff. So
Yeah, and like you said, we hint towards it, right? He loses his master in this. There is, of course, Rising Storm finishes that storyline with the Loden stuff. I already recorded that episode. We'll get to it in a couple
okay,
weeks when I
yeah,
drop it. But it is, yeah. So stay listening, and you'll hear what happens to Loden if you have not read past Light of the Jedi. And then he just goes through so many things. I think he really gets
yes,
put through the ringer. I feel like quite a bit, Bell.
he does, especially when it comes to his master. But I think when you get to the Rising Storm, I think he really steps up, and you can tell he's getting closer to the rank of Jedi as the series goes on and stuff. But he I won't say anything about phase three, so I'm but
I'll try to catch up as soon as I can, and then I can message you with.
well, I'm all caught up with everything. I'm just waiting on a wave two to start with Temptation of the Force. So but then I've got some comics to pick up too. So,
Oh,
but
nice.
I'm all caught up. So
Yeah, I have it. I have it pre-ordered. Temptation of the Force on Audible. I just haven't. I have to finish phase 2 and then get into phase 3.
usually when all the books come out, I'm right on top of it. So I
Yeah,
pre-order
that's how
them
I
and
start, and then it's like life happens, and I end up skipping it for a bit.
oh
Um, and then we also get introduced to Porter Angle too,
yes,
who is on Elfrana, right?
yeah,
Elfrana as
yep.
well. And he's like been around for a while, right? Didn't they say he's like
He
old?
has, if you there's a comic series called The Blade that's in phase two, and those are
Hmm.
his younger days, and
Oh,
so
nice.
you'll see why he's called the Blade of Barbada in that comic and stuff. But I love that he went from that to being a chef.
Yes,
It's
yeah, he is
great.
making what 9-egg stew
My
is what he's
goodness.
making.
Yeah. But the man knows how to fight too, so when he has to. So
Yeah, he's like just from the picture that they have of him, he's like a pretty big guy. I don't know if I would ever fight him if I had the chance. Um,
yes.
okay, and then on Naboo, right? They even go to Naboo in this, and that's
Yeah.
where the Santekas are.
Yeah,
But
that's
like
where
Avar and Elzar go there.
yes, that's where they go because they're trying to see about what's going on with hyperspace, and that's a specialty of the Santekas and stuff, which they get more
Mhm.
into how their specialty is that in phase two. And they visit a couple of Santekas there that can give them a little hint about hyperspace to give them a hand with that. And so that's why they're on a boot, but they're wondering if maybe Mari Santeca might be involved in this somehow, but she's really up there in age and stuff.
Yeah.
So they'd be wondering how she's still alive. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, the story ends like you said. They do prevent it from happening. They do save at least Hetzel, and they lose Loden. He's captured. That's where we'll pick up on Rising Storm. So Bell is going to go and have a new master at a certain point, and we also have, Avar, like you said, was like the big hero of this disaster. She is going to also be kind of like the leader, right, of the what is it, Marshal
she's
of
the Marshal
Starlight
of
Beacon?
Starlight Beacon. And then for those two, Elzar's actually not a Jedi Master in this book. He's a
Yes.
Jedi Knight because the Jedi don't agree with necessarily how he does things, and it isn't until the end of this book that he actually becomes a Jedi Master and stuff. And
He's
then
kind of the Anakin Skywalker where they're like, we can't do that. We can't grant you master yet.
and there's some interesting things that go on in the Rising Storm and the Fallen Star with him too.
Yes.
What happened? The Jedi that becomes Belle's master, her name's Indira Stokes, and she's actually part of the Jedi that are on the Inferno outpost. The Jedi set during this time, they have these outposts in these planets that are in the outer rim that are far off from the Republic. That way they're there to help people and stuff. And the Nile become interested in this family that are there, and they're going to
Yes.
get them to sell them to their relatives that are on Alderaan. And so the Jedi at the outpost learn about this family that's being taken, and that's how Loden ends up getting captured by the Nile and trying to save the father of that family and stuff, who does end up getting killed, unfortunately. But the rest of the family is able to escape, and that's when they think that Loden's dead and stuff, but he's in the hands of Marky and Roe and stuff. So
yeah, no, great. I remember the family. I remember them getting like almost kidnapped at a certain point, right? Or they did get kidnapped, and
then they were able to get to them. They have these animals called steelies, and they're able to get them on the farm, and that's how they're able to chase down the Nile and go and get the family and stuff. So, but they're trying. But in the public side of things, they're trying to figure out how this disaster was caused, if it was something through hyperspace, and then eventually they learn about this log that they can get, and eventually they do learn about the Nile, and they're the ones that caused this, and then they go to the Kerr Nebula, and they think they're going to stop the Nile right then and there, but there are some Jedi that die in that fight, but they think that they had beaten the Nile just then and there, but obviously if you read further along in the books, they did not beat them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, one thing you want to learn if you're going to read any of these books is that no one is safe, really. They kill off a lot of characters in this series so far. So that's what they're known for.
Yeah, because Charles Soule went and straight up started killing people in the first 2 chapters.
Yeah.
It's like, there you go. That's what you're in for.
So everybody else is like, oh, we gotta kill our guys too.
And then just one thing with Starlight Beacon, Lena Soule, who is Chancellor of the Republic at this time, she has this thing that she's doing called the Great Works to help spread the Republic around, and that's what Starlight Beacon's a part of. And then part of that Great Works is also going to be the Republic Fair that's going to be on Valor in the next book and stuff when you get to that. And so that's a part of. But then after all this stuff happens and Loden's captured and the Nile are still out there, they have a dedication ceremony on Starlight Beacon where all the Jedi are invited. Lena Soule's there and everybody. And then right at the end of the book, Elzar and Avar, they have a history together, which that's not something that you usually hear from Jedi, having a detachment like that. And obviously Avar becomes Marshal of the Starlight Beacon, and you can see more of her stuff in the High Republic comics by Kevin Scott, so because that's where she pops up a lot.
That shocked me. I mentioned this in one of the other episodes too, but that shocked me because I felt like, she's front and center on this book, and she is in this book a lot, but like I thought she was going to kind of be like the lead of like the adult novels. But she really falls off right here and goes into the comics, and like she's not as heavily featured in like Rising Storm, Fallen Star. So what I would recommend, and this is where I really started figuring out like, oh my God, I'm reading these wrong, is like when I go from here to Rising Storm and then I read Fallen Star and I'm like, we didn't really ever hear from Avar again. They mention her, but like she's doing other stuff. And then I'm like reading the comics. I'm like, oh, she's doing this stuff. Okay.
And then like you had made a point too earlier about like the young adult books. Like you have this species called the Dringer that's introduced it into the dark that carry on into the comics. That's even mentioned in like the Rising Storm and stuff. So but those comics are where you have to see like Avar. Avar pops up a little bit in the Rising Storm and stuff, but she's like out on a mission and trying to defeat the Drangir and stuff, and then she pops up a little bit in the Fallen Star and stuff. But a lot of her adventures and seeing where that goes, you got to read the comics by Kevin Scott. So, and then at the end of the book, Elzar has a vision of things yet to come, and the one thing the Jedi don't usually have to worry about, which is fear. And so that's where the book basically ends, where Marchion has Loden And then when you get to Path of Deceit, there's a similarity between
nice.
Marky and Rowan, the character in there, you'll see, and stuff. So, and that's where we leave off, where the Jedi think and the Republic think they defeated the Nihil, and they haven't. So they're still out there.
Yeah. Yeah, really interesting the way that they've decided to divide some of this stuff up throughout the, throughout the books and stuff. I had somebody say that Phase 2 was actually like less characters, and that's why they actually preferred Phase 2 to Phase 1. And I can kind of see where that might be. Like, I haven't fully read Phase 2 yet, so I don't know how true that is. But in the sense of I can see why that would be a turn on for people, because Phase 1 has so many books with different characters, and they introduce a lot of characters.
Yes.
A lot of times because they're going to kill them off, right? So like you will have less characters as you go. It's just, like you said, even somehow how they're like bringing in some of these villains.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're coming in from this middle grade book or from this young adult book, and you have to have read it to understand, this or whatever.
Well, I think a lot of the reason why people might not have Light of the Jedi first is because of all the characters they introduce in this book, which there is a lot. And what I think might have benefited maybe having this book as a dramatized personae like they used to have in like the old EU book, saying which character was which, because I think that might have helped a little bit. Now, I've read Phase 2. To me, and I don't know how anybody else feels about this, but I think that the young adult books are like more important than even the adult books.
I've heard other people say that too. Yeah.
So, because the young adult books have to do with the Rowe family, and so that's why I feel like they're more important and stuff like that. But the adult books are still really good. Like, I really loved Cataclysm by Lydia Kang. I thought that was a really good book too. And I love Axel Greylark, so.
Yes. No, yeah, he's one of my favorite characters when I read Convergence. That was one that I was wondering how I would like Phase 2. And not to kind of go off on a tangent here, but it was like, I really liked Phase 1, and I'm like, and I wasn't keeping up with Phase 2 at the time of like news, right? So I read Phase 1, and then I look at Phase 2, and people are like, well, it actually takes place like, another 100 years beforehand or 50 years beforehand. And you're like, oh, well, I really want to see what happened at the end of Fallen Star. So can I skip Phase 2? And people are like, no, you can't skip Phase 2. Phase 2, very important. So then I'm like, all right, I guess I'll have to give it a try. And then I listened to Convergence, and to be honest, the characters in that were very good, that I kind of forgot about, like, being worried about that. Like, I kind of bought into it. I liked the plot line that they had in that book. So I'll save that for my Phase 2 talk. But, it was just, I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, I guess.
Yes. The problem is, though, a lot of people got thrown off. I noticed when they announced Phase 2 was 150 years in the past, and they kind of fell off the bandwagon a little bit, which was unfortunate, because I thought Phase 2 was really good. I had missed like the characters from Phase 1, but I was getting used to like Gela, Ziri, Fan 2, Axel, and even like the middle grade books with like Rupert and then Marta Rowe and stuff like that. So I still enjoyed those characters. So.
You know what? Something I just thought about when we were talking here is how, I know they're spelled differently, right? But the fact that the main villain is Markion Rowe, and we have Vernestra Rowe as a Jedi. Just interesting that like they had somebody with a very similar sounding last name as a villain and as a hero. Like, I don't know why they decided to do that. They do spell them very differently, but it was just... I can see where people, like, if you're listening instead of reading and seeing how Rowe is spelled RWOH, that might get very confusing.
Right. And then what I think is also great heading into the Acolyte, which is 100 years later after these books, Vernestra Rowe, who's a teenager right now, she's going to be in that show. So I've never been so excited about anybody opening a door. So.
Yeah. No, that was really cool, saying that Vernestra is going to be in the in the show. I wonder how big of a role she's actually going to have.
I know some people were wondering maybe she's not going to have that big of a role. And I know Leslie Headland mentioned that maybe there was going to be other characters in season 2 that might pop up from the book. So I don't know how.
That'd be cool.
I don't know if she's going to have that big of a role and stuff. I think all the newer characters and stuff are going to be more important to the show than her. But I think we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, because there's actually quite a few Jedi that are around at this point of time.
Yep.
That are also around in episode 1. You know, Yarl Poof, right? You have Yaddle, Yoda. Like those 3 are Jedi that are on the council in this and are on the council.
Yep.
In episode 1 and stuff. So very interesting. I was wondering if we're going to see like Yoda in the Acolyte as well or not, you know.
That's a good question. He's there obviously, but I don't know if Leslie Head wants to do that or not. But
because one of the things they've done right so far, what I've noticed with Yoda, they've only mentioned him in the books. He's like in the High Republic Adventures. Is that right?
He showed up a little bit in that, but he disappeared for a while, and then he came back, and he's in a little bit of phase 2. Like when you get to Cataclysm, Yaddle's in there quite a bit. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Yaddle. Big fan of her too, and they've been using her a lot lately too, because she was in Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for her, she was in Tales of the Jedi.
Yep.
All right. Well, I guess that anything else about this book, or a closing statement on the book before we wrap it up?
I mean, it's a personal favorite of mine, and I know a lot of people, it's not their favorite because a lot of people do have a hard time with all the characters that are introduced here, and so that sometimes that's harder. And I think A Rising Storm is easier to read because you're used to the characters by now, and you're comfortable with that, and so that's why a lot of people pick The Rising Storm. I love them both, but I Light of the Jedi today. So, but yeah, Kevin Scott really pulls the heartstrings on that book.
It's like the Empire Strikes Back of the adult novels. I feel like it's the one people really pick a lot as their favorite, and you get a lot of dark stuff.
Well, even The Fallen Star kind of ends on a not so great note.
Yes.
To get there. So. But I thought it was a great start. It made me fall in love with a lot of the characters. I thought it was really interesting to see them at the height of their power wearing their golden robes. It was a different kind of
the gold.
Yeah, it's a different kind of villain that we're not used to seeing. He's not a force user or anything like that. And then as the High Republic goes on, you learn his family's backstory and stuff. So there's more to him and stuff. So I thought it was just really, really good. And like you, I am glad that they kind of went away from the Skywalker saga a little bit and stuff to focus on this, because they do have, like we were mentioning before, like the one-shot books and stuff where they did one story. Like the adult books, you have like 3 books. Same thing with like middle grade and young adult and stuff too. So that's what's nice about it too. But sometimes you do need to read more than just the adult books. Sometimes you do need to pick like the young adult, like Out of the Shadows. Something happens in that you might want to read for the Fallen Star when you get to that. So
and there's characters that balance, like I said, between the two of the 2 mediums or 3 mediums that they have.
Yeah, like for instance, Vernestra Rose in Defy the Storm. Whenever we get to that, she's also going to be in Temptation of the Force. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, because she starts in Test of Courage, right? And then
she does. She goes to that, and then young adult with Out of the Shadows, and then she's back to middle grade again, and then she's back to young adult again. So,
yeah, interesting how they choose. You know, I guess some of it is like the writer, right? Because like Justina Ireland wrote the first 2 appearances of her, and you know, so I guess that's part of it. I'm not really sure, but another thing I was thinking about before we wrap up is something I've noticed reading like the first 3, I would say, right? So Light of the Jedi,
yes.
Test of Courage,
yes,
and Into the Dark. all kind of end. Same thing with the comic, like the first 6 of the
Yes.
comic or whatever, all end at that dedication.
Yes.
So that's kind of like the end of like that's kind of like a point where you can tell, oh, we're here now. Like this is almost like a Avengers film or something. Where you're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
they're all in the same room at this moment, and then they're gonna kind of go back apart again. But just something I picked up on reading those recently.
Yeah, then I forgot to also mention the audiobooks. There's Tempest Runner by Kevin Scott, which is
Yes, Lorna Dee's story.
yep, right there in the middle that you gotta know a little bit into going into the Fallen Star. And then for phase 2, there's a book called The Battle of Jedi by George Mann that's in between phase waves and stuff too. So that's probably something good to read too. So sometimes you just gotta read more than what you want to read. I know it's a lot of homework sometimes, but
well, what I've suggested and what I suggest to people listening now, if you got through this and you say it sounds cool, I want to actually read it, so I'm not getting just a surface level thing. I want to actually dive into these characters and stuff. If it sounds like it's expensive, because it is, right? If you're
right, yeah,
you're gonna buy all these either audiobooks, or if you're gonna buy all the physical books, check your library.
right,
Go to a local library. If you don't have a card, sign up for a card. A lot of libraries allow you to use your card to use a digital app called Libby and Hoopla.
yeah,
And on those apps, you are able to get ebooks. So if you want to read on your Kindle instead of reading a physical book, they also allow you to borrow the audiobooks. That way you don't have to shell out however much that is. And or you can just place it and get a physical book at your library. No one will be mad at you for using your public library. It's a good
right. No,
resource.
it's
It's
always
how
good to do
I've
that.
been doing the middle grade and how I've been doing the young adult. Like I had Into the Dark, I had
Yeah,
started it, I had fallen off of it to a point where it was a year later, and I'm like, I could pick it up and read it, but will I remember the 20% of the book I had read before that?
yeah,
A little bit. So I was like, oh, I'll listen to the audiobook to catch me up to where I was in the book.
right,
And then I left for vacation and I was like,
yeah,
oh, I'll just listen to it as I drive anyway. So it really helped me like get over a hump in a part where like I was kind of stuck.
right.
And I definitely recommend anybody that if you, the audiobooks are very well produced because they have the sound effects, they
Yes.
have Mark Thompson reading the adult ones, and he's fantastic. Just, give it a try, see if you like it. That would be my pitch to you.
I was going to say that, yeah, because I'm somebody who prefers reading over the audiobooks, but if you have a hard time getting into it, or if you're like you and you fell off of it, yeah, the audiobook might be better for you because especially if you don't have the time to read it. And then, but if you want to have like a physical copy of it, absolutely go to your public library and do that and stuff. Either that or wait till they eventually do go, hardcovers do go out to trade and stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's also available and stuff. So that's where we're at. So
yeah, definitely. That is the way to do it. Use your library, buy the book. Sometimes Audible has deals where you can even just like sign up and get like 3 books at once for really cheap or something. Like there's like that's how I had gotten all of my Star Wars books.
yeah.
So I had signed up for Audible for like for a trial, and it was like you get 3 credits, and I had got like Fire and Blood from the Game of Thrones spinoff for House of the Dragon, and I was like, oh, I'll read this before the show comes out, and then I just didn't cancel it, so I kept getting a credit every month.
Right.
And I was like, what am I going to use all these credits on? And I'm like, oh, I'll just go and like get all these Star Wars books because there's always a Star Wars book coming out. So I was like, get that one. And I canceled it probably months ago, but I still had like 3 credits to use. So I pre-ordered The Living Force, the new book coming out this month.
Yes.
Which I'm really excited for. And then I pre-ordered the 2 upcoming High Republic books.
I haven't pre-ordered The Living Force yet. I'm probably going to buy it at the beginning of May. And then obviously, once I have it, I'm going to be pre-ordering Temptation of the Force, which that's Tessa Graven's first adult Star Wars book. So I'm looking forward to that. And a lot of the stuff I pre-order is usually the High Republic first, and then I'm old-fashioned. I buy the regular physical copies of books, and that can be money, but that's why the library is there. So
yes, exactly.
You can't buy it. So, and then like you said, you can get deals on like Audible and stuff if you need to do audiobooks. So.
Yeah, because they can be expensive otherwise.
Yes, they can.
Audiobooks can be very expensive. Sometimes they're like, I don't know. Like if you look at like Apple or something and go to audiobook section, sometimes they're like $40. And I'm like, what?
Well, I'm looking at my copy of Light of the Jedi right now, and it's usually $28.99. I think I got it off Amazon. I think because I didn't realize Barnes and Noble had their own edition, and I didn't think about it.
Oh yeah, that sucks too. Is Barnes and Noble is like always got their own cover of one of these things, and
well, usually they include a poster, and what happened is I was telling you I have all the signatures of all the adult novels. I've got 3 copies of The Rising Storm with
you have the different cover because they have the special cover too, don't they?
I do. I've got the regular one with the Barnes and Noble poster, the Target one, and then the out of print one. So nice. I've got, and then some of my young adult books I even have like signed copies and a regular reading copies. It's like I've never collected so much stuff like that in my life from authors. And then even this, I have a signed book plate by Charles Soule in here. So
that's awesome.
So
where do you go to conventions and get them to sign it, or is it?
Well, Charles Soule was doing signed book plates where you could buy them online during the pandemic.
Oh, cool. That's
and
awesome.
then Out of Print was selling signed covers, signed books of the books, and they had different covers on them that are made out of a different material. And then they stopped doing that, and then Goldsboro started doing it in phase 2, and they have like sprayed pages on it, and they're signed. Like I have one for Convergence, Cataclysm, and then The Eye of Darkness. So, but those are cool because the colors are different. Like one's pink, then you have blue, yellow. So that's where I've been getting my recent signed ones from. So. And then there's others like indie stores like Justina Ireland and Tessa Grattan did one together for Happen to See. So you just have to look around. And then Jose Older has a store where you can get signed stuff too. So, but sometimes it's out of stock and you have to wait till it's back in. So.
No, that's awesome. Those are cool collectibles to have. So.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up here. I just want to thank you for coming back, coming on the show, answering my post of Talking High Republic. And I guess if you want to share if anybody can follow you anywhere or see your thoughts as the High Republic books drop or any other things that you're into.
Usually when I get a new High Republic book, I will either post it. I'm on Facebook. I'm on X, formerly Twitter. I'm also on Instagram. And a lot of the times I will usually tag the authors of these new books, and I will let them know when I get it, or a lot of the times I'll post my thoughts and stuff. But I'm around. I don't know all my hashtags, but they're there. And then I'm also seen monthly on Spider-Man Crawl Space reviewing Spider-Man comics on there, so you can see me once a month on that too. So
that's awesome.
So
yeah, we've been. Have you been reading Ultimate Spider-Man?
I have. I'm only up to issue 2, but I'm gonna go see if I can get my new comics tomorrow and get issue 3. So.
Yeah, you got to get issue 3. We've been talking that. I have a Marvel podcast as well, so we've been talking that over on our Marvel pod each month.
I'm a big Marvel fan, so right now I'm living off X-Men 97 too. So
yes, I love X-Men 97.
I've been posting my thoughts on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram about that and stuff. So.
Yeah, because I think you retweeted the same thing I did, or liked, which was the Lois joke from Family Guy of like, what Madeline Pryor looked like, before she realized she's a clone, and then after she realized she's a clone.
Yes, I've been reading the Chris Claremont X-Men comics as well recently. Like I just read Life, Death Part 1 on Easter of all days, and so they're going to be doing some of that in this episode tomorrow. So, but you can
Yeah.
find me around, because a lot of the times I will post my Star Wars books, my Marvel stuff I get and stuff, but you'll see me. So
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on. If you want to follow the show here, if you're listening along, it's at podawakens on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, all that good stuff. You can like and hit my microphone. You can like and subscribe to us here on the YouTube, and you can also rate and review us on Apple Podcast and Spotify. So I'll be dropping these like every Friday. Until I run out of Fridays for the Acolyte, and then I'm probably gonna have to double up some of these weeks.
You may have to review some of the comics on there if you run out of.
We will. Yeah, I got a guy that's gonna chat comics with me. Thankfully, I got way more response than I thought I was actually gonna get on this. I originally thought I was gonna get one episode to talk about the books and maybe one on the comics, but I had so many people reach out that I started being like, I guess I can do one for each book. And while that's more work for me, I think it's better conversation and better talk for like the listeners too, to be able to understand a little bit more about the High Republic than just squeezing it into one show.
Well, I also have my High Republic shirt on too.
That's awesome.
I loved talking about it because, like I said, I don't have anybody to talk to about it because none of my friends like Star Wars. It's just me. So it's nice to talk to somebody about it. And I had a fun time. And so if you bring me back on another show, that'd be great. So
yeah, maybe if we get done the Living Force book, maybe we can talk about that on here once you read it.
Maybe I can pick it up at the end of April and stuff, because I usually order at Barnes & Noble. I like those when they come with those free posters. So, and plus I have a discount, so that's always helpful.
Yeah, no rush. I'm not going to make you speed read it or anything. But...
No, I will message you on Twitter when I get it and I read it then. So,
all right, thank you. So that'll wrap up this episode. We'll see you next Friday when we talk Into the Dark.
Wow.